Thank you everybody for joining. I'm Jo Stanford. I head up the Healthcare Project and Change Association. We're just going to do a little bit of an overview of who we are while you introduce yourselves in the chat and get to know each other. Please do put any comments, thoughts, ideas. We're really interested in what people have got to say about this, but if it's a large group of people, it's always great to connect in the chat and get people's thoughts and ideas. We will be doing a Q&A at the end, so there is a Q&A section, so if you want to put any questions you have into there, please do get those ready and upvote the ones you're interested in, so that you make sure you get the questions that you want answered by Stuart and myself. So a little bit of background for anybody who's new to the community. As I said, I head up the HPCA. We are a community interest company, so not for profit, and it's by the community for the community. I was head of the corporate portfolio office at Health Education England for 10 years and head of profession. And myself and a group of others helped to get the association set up to represent the needs and the development of the project and change profession in the NHS, but also building capability across the whole workforce. So we're here as part of a community of interest, and that's really at the heart of what we do, which is why it's so fantastic to have so many people here today. PMOs are an important part of that, because you as a group, or we as collectively, are there to support the organisations to develop, to support the standards, the capabilities, and also to manage the portfolios of programmes and projects across our organisations. So we have communities of practice, including this one, but we also have the regional networks. If you aren't registered with us, please do subscribe and join your regional network. It's really important that we share the knowledge and learning that we have with each other. And to connect and make everybody's life easier and get done what we need to get done and deliver outcomes. So part of what we do is also to work collaboratively with the other associations across the healthcare sector. Some of them have been around for a very long time. So HFMA, the Healthcare Financial Management Association, that's been around for 75 years. HPMA just celebrated its 50th year. And we would really love to get to the point where HPMA is a part of that ongoing support network to the future of the NHS. And it is here as a legacy of all of ours to help that future to keep going and to keep supporting the patients we're here to help to treat. And so part of it's about workforce development. How do we support the workforce? How do we support with putting training and development in place, apprenticeship programs, standards and capabilities? And how can we as a group make sure that our organisations are supporting our workforce to develop? But also in terms of training and development for both yourselves and the people within your organisation. We have the core skills online learning modules, and one of the things we want to do is make sure everybody develops skills. So clinicians, senior leads, ops people, finance, everybody has core skills, because everybody gets involved in projects and change. And as PMO leads, it's generally going to come down to you to say, well, what kind of training should we provide to the organisation in this space? So do have a look on our website. We've got the free online learning modules, but we've also got the next level training for those that want to build their skills, particularly if you're working with SROs, because again, that's generally not from their professional background. So it's really good to provide them with some training and development around that. So do look at our website to have a look at more details. If you're only just joining us now, welcome, and do introduce yourself in the chat and let us know who you are and what you do. As I said, the SRO Essentials, it's really critical that we get very good programme project leadership, and that means having the skills to be able to lead those changes effectively. And having that knowledge is going to be really important. So have a look on our website and see if there's people that you can recommend to develop their skills as being SROs. But also in terms of leadership, what does an SRO need to do? And are you clear about that as well, potentially? As I said, we're a not-for-profit organisation. We don't have any central funding. We aren't hosted by an NHS organisation. We're a separate community interest company, and we're very much dependent on organisational membership to keep us running. And if we're going to be here alongside the other associations representing the sort of 15,000 plus project and change professionals in the future, we really need you to help us to get the membership out there and get it embedded in organisations. We have organisational membership on the basis that individuals, we want to make the community free for everybody to be a part of, so nobody's excluded. But developing individual capability isn't enough to make organisations effective. So to be able to integrate standards and best practice and frameworks and tools and build organisational maturity, we need the organisations engaged and involved. And that means talking to counterparts in finance and transformation and senior leadership to say, how are we supporting the organisation as a whole to improve the way in which it delivers projects and change, but also to make sure it's delivering the right outcomes. And prioritisation and investment in change is going to be really critical in the coming year in this area. So what are you doing to ready your organisation for all the changes that are going to come? One of the things we're really going to talk about, and it's really critical to the content of this particular section today, which is around that prioritisation piece, is all of the change that's going on at the moment. You may have read the Darzi review that looked at, what were the key issues in the NHS currently that then prompted the government to initiate the development of a 10-year plan for the NHS. So if you look at that, and there's links that we'll put in the chat so that you can have a read up on what the Darzi review recommendations were, what the government's response to that was, but also primarily what do we do next? Because the 10-year plan, there's a big consultation out around the 10-year plan at the moment for everybody to contribute to, and that includes everybody here. Some of the three key themes that have been drawn out are: how do we improve moving from sickness to prevention, moving away from care in the hospital to care in the community, and improving how we use technology, moving from analog to digital. Now, these are really fundamental changes to the NHS. So who's going to be the people leading on all of this complex change? Now, technically, it's going to be this group of people. It's going to be people who are organising, not just how they work in their organisation, but how they work across organisations and across the systems that are going to be involved in this. And this is a really tough ask at a time when organisations are really challenged financially, resourcing, psychologically. So as a group, one of the things we need to think about is, what do we do to be able to contribute to that conversation, but also to ready us organisations and our systems to be able to deal with and prepare for the plans that are going to come out, because they're going to be expecting quick results on some of these things. And what can we do to be ready for that journey? So there are a number of sections within the NHS change consultation. The link is in the chat, and there's a particular area that's around your workforce experiences. So it's aimed at NHS staff currently, looking for you to say, what do you think should change? What experience have you had? And also, what can we do to improve things? So please do click on the links and individually respond and put your thoughts and ideas and contributions in. But also, as an association, what we're going to do is we're going to pull together some responses to say, how can we represent the needs of the profession, to say, what can we do to support the delivery of these objectives as well? So we'll be putting an organisational response forward in regard to this change. Just one more thing before I introduce you to today's fantastic speaker is, part of this is about a mindset readiness for change, and it's about what we can do to help to lead that change and not passively wait for somebody to tell us what to do in relation to it. We are the experts when it comes to portfolio program project management and change management. They should be coming to us, and we should be going to them to say, actually, here's what we can do to help the organisation improve how it does it, improve its capability, look at resourcing capacity it has, but also how does it prioritise the things that it needs to do, so that we're spending the right time and effort and energy on the things that will add value and make a difference. So some key messages in terms of how do we individually prepare and how do we prepare our organisations for the change that's coming. Building capability across the workforce, particularly in the project professionals to lead it, but also everybody else, because everybody is going to be involved in change, and developing that mindset for change is going to be really key. Developing standards and governance for effective decision making, and it's not as simple as organisational anymore. There's a lot of partnerships, there's a lot of system-wide connection and collaborations going on. How do we make sure we've got the right governance and safety and decision making in place around that? Engaging senior leaders. We have And you might have experienced this where senior leaders will manage and lead a lot of change, but not necessarily have had that as a background. If people aren't trained in it, then we don't always get the outcomes and the results that we really need. And they don't necessarily know that that training is there to support them. So please do your bit to see if you can get that senior engagement to say, actually, project management, the role of the SRO, exec sponsors, decision makers, those are all things that can be supported, and you can help support them by directing them to standards, maturity assessment, training and development, to help to raise awareness of the need to improve the maturity around that capability. And then really raising awareness around prioritization, outcomes and benefits. Every organisation is struggling financially, and we're going to have to cut our cloth to fit with what organisations are investing, and that's going to be a challenge for us. But if we don't support organisations to improve the way in which they prioritise how they spend the money and how they deliver outcomes, we're not going to make any changes, because these are in a financial hole because of changes that haven't been made. So I think there's a big cultural and behavioural change that needs to happen in order for us to become sustainable going forward. And then more importantly is building the networks and the connections regionally and across specific improvement areas so that everybody can share the learning and share the knowledge and share the resources, because we're only actually going to save the NHS for the future if we all work together on it. There is no competition. There is no we win if you lose. It's only a win-win if we all come out of this delivering better services across the whole sector. So to help us to look at that in more detail and to look at how we can prioritise and plan for improved portfolios and investment in change, I'm going to introduce you to Stuart Easton, from Transparent Choice. He's a fantastic speaker, and if anybody's been to the House of PMO conference, they may have seen Stuart there, and he's going to help us get our ducks in order, aren't you, Stuart? Thank you very much for joining us today.
We're going to get our ducks in a row. So thanks, Joe, for that. So before we dive into the slides and everything, I did say get your fingers warmed up because we're going to be using the keyboard, right? So let's start. So Joe was talking about all these things that we need to do. Can you just rate your organization, yourself, on a scale from 0 being I've got no hope at all to 10 being yeah, we've nailed this, right? How confident are you that you can do all those things, that you've got the executive support and the organizational buy-in to do the things that were on the previous slide that Joe asked you about? Just bang in the chat, put yourself on that 0 to 10 scale somewhere. I'm expecting a whole lot of 2s and 3s, and maybe if you, oh, we've got a 7, nice one, straight in at 7. Yeah, there we go. Okay, there's some pretty good numbers in there. Excellent. So while you're doing that, over the last couple of months, I've been talking to a number of different PMO leaders across the NHS, and so a lot of what I'm going to talk about is based on that. Is based on what I've learned in those conversations, and here we go. We're just going to share the screen. All right, Joe, just give me a shout. Let me know you can see the screen if you would.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay. Fabulous. And you don't have the Teams box over the top, I assume. You see it just nicely.
Yeah.
Fabulous. So we're going to go and we're going to have some fun, right? This should be fun, and it should be engaging. And as I say, keep those chat windows open because you're going to need them later on. All right. So we're all sick of hearing how sick the NHS is, right? But just to hammer the point, Joe's already talked a little bit about this. You know, you've got the Darzi report. We've got some money coming. We've got the big consultation that's going on right now, and so on, right? So it's in the news, and you know what? It should be in the news. Right. This is a statistic. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but the NHS directly and indirectly employs almost 10% of the UK workforce. I mean, that's a staggering number when you think about it. So this is a national treasure, but it's also a national obligation to take care of that and to be efficient and effective with that level of investment. And so what we need to do is we need to get from the sick bed. And get out there make the duck healthy so it can go out and play games and deliver the result and value that we want. And to get from the sick bed to being that healthy, sporty runaround duck, right, we need to deliver change. Right? Change is how we're going to get there. So change and transformation was, Joe, you mentioned both those phrases a couple of times, right? Change is how we're going to get there. And even the PM in his speech the other day basically said, yeah, we're going to give you all the money you need, but we have to fix the plumbing. I love this. We have to fix the plumbing before turning on the taps. Right. And so hear me when I say this, no more money without reform. The most important word in all of this is not money. The most important word in that is reform, because reform means change, and change means projects. And at the minute, what I've heard over the last few months talking to PMO leaders across the NHS is that the capacity for delivering change is really quite small. It's not terribly mature at some level. And I think the scores that you all put in the chat a minute or two ago will bear this out. A lot of people across the NHS feel like we're not really good at delivering this change thing. I'm not saying why at the minute. We're going to dig into that in a minute. So we need to go from here to here, right? We need to be able to deliver huge change, because huge change is coming. Right, it's coming whether we want it to or not. It's happening. So we need to kind of get ready for it and build that capability. Right. So it's not bodybuilding. Right. What we need to do is build the capability to deliver change. Right. If we want to make the duck healthy, get it out of bed, then we need to deliver that change. So you're probably wondering why there are all these ducks all over the place. So I've been privileged over the last couple of years to speak at all kinds of different conferences, PMI, APM, all these kind of places. And one of I find it really useful to use metaphors, right, to try and change the culture of project delivery. And so the idea of this change is to go from talking about projects to talking about value and delivering change. So a friend of mine was delivering a project to one of the world's biggest oil and gas companies, who was presenting it to the CEO of the organization. And he's doing what we project geeks do. I wonder if the lights will come on if I dance around a bit. Maybe not. Oh dear, never mind. But he did what all us project geeks do. And he was presenting his Gantt chart and his burn down report and all that kind of stuff. And the CEO stopped him and he said, Roberto, I don't care if you've got a boy duck or a girl duck. Right? So in other words, I don't care about the project. I don't even understand the project. So I don't care if you've got a boy duck or a girl duck. I just want eggs. Right? I want the value. And this is sort of really all that your leadership cares about. Right. So when they're not engaging, it's probably because they don't really understand. They don't see the link between what you're asking them to do and the value they're going to get. But it's all about delivering eggs. So the ducks are the projects and the eggs are the value. And so a big part of the message today is that what we're trying to do, what we want to do, is increase the number of eggs, right, or the amount of eggs that we're delivering. And when you ask the leadership team which egg is most important to deliver, right? What I've heard from you guys is that in NHS the answer tends to be we have to do everything. I'm going to break it to you. It's not just in the NHS. This is across all government departments, across all companies. This is generally the answer is we have to do everything. But in the NHS, it might be a little bit more acute, because you have lots of government targets and things like that. And it feels like you just have to do everything because it's a target. We're going to challenge some of that thinking as we go along. And here's why, right? This is really important. So fingers on keyboards, please. Let me just, oops. All right, fingers on keyboards. And Joe, if you can just help me out by reading any of the comments. So here's a road, right? The road represents the resources that you have to deliver projects. And so I'm going to ask you, first of all, why do we build roads? What's the point of building a road? jump into chat, give me your answers. I'm going to see how bright you guys are compared to the PMI audience a couple of months ago. So why do we build roads?
So to get from A to B, access to places.
Good. To get what from A to B?
Okay, so they're spinning in here really fast. So roads reduce system friction in travel. To get to there in brackets. To connect places.
To connect places, I like that.
To get to the destination.
Okay, and I come back. To get what to the destination specifically?
So an interesting one from Heidi, social value, economic prosperity.
Oh, I like the way you're thinking, Heidi.
Yeah, and
you're being more sophisticated than I am on this session.
so we've got people, transport, logistics, people and goods.
So there's lots of answers that are sort of about getting from A to B, getting things, moving them, getting into the destination. But specifically, it's not about getting cars from A to B, funnily enough, because it's a road. It's actually about getting people and goods from A to B. Ultimately, we want to drive that economic activity and social interactions and everything else. But the job of the road is to get people from A to B. And so the people are the value. The car is the project, and the road are the resources that we've got available to us to deliver those cars to which contain the people to the destination. So our job is to maximize the people, number of people. So you'll see here, this road's empty. We've got 0% utilization of the road. How many people, again, back in the chat, how many people are getting to the destination right now?
Zero.
There we go. So what do we do?
Already? None. Nil.
Yeah, it's like Christmas Day, isn't it? So there we go. So we put some cars on the road, right? So we're at about 30% utilization, just eyeballing that. Let's call it 30%. Cars are whizzing along. Everybody's happy. Lots of people getting to the destination. This is good. So we put some more cars on and more cars. And then the executives have this genius idea, right? We're getting more and more people to the destination. Let's go for 100% utilization, right? You can't get better than 100% utilization, surely. But we have words for 100% utilization of a road. Does everybody want to have a guess what those words are? What do we call 100% utilization?
Merlin's already come in with congested.
Congested,
traffic
nice.
jam, gridlock,
traffic,
car park.
M25, that's a common one. Right.
We've got hell.
Yeah, exactly. So it looks like this. And so, last question on this little bit. How many people are getting to the destination right now?
None.
There's probably a few. Those guys on bikes are getting through.
That's what Chad just said, guy on his bike.
Exactly. But people are, they're getting there, but they're getting there slowly. So what does this look like in project land, right, for the people here? So on the horizontal axis, we've got the resource utilization. These are your people, your capacity to deliver stuff. On the vertical axis is the value that you're delivering to your respective part of the NHS. So if you're not doing any projects, you're not getting any value. We add a few projects, so you get some value. Hey, this is great. Let's add some more. We're getting more value. But then somewhere up here, something weird happens, right? This is where you're starting to get competition for resources. People are starting to multitask, right? Resource contention's kicking in. And so, and this, by the way, if you look at the queuing theory, this normally happens around about 85% of capacity for your resources. Excuse me. And so if you add more projects beyond that, well, actually, no, let's stay there. So this is where you start to get task switching. So people often say that they multitask. When you're doing complex tasks, actually, we don't multitask. We task switch. We move from one task to the next. And the American Psychology Association did publish some research that shows that when you're task switching on complex tasks like project deliverables, you lose up to 40% of your capacity just to managing the task switching. So think about it from a, if you're a person, finger on keyboard, you're delivering a new IT system to automate a process. And first of all, you've got 6 tasks you're meant to be working on. So you're moving from task to task. There's a bit of brain gear changing that has to go on when you do that. But you've also got 4 different project managers coming up to you twice a day saying, what's the update on my task? Have you finished my task yet? And every time you do that, you stop, you answer the question, and it takes you a few minutes to get back into it. And before you know it, 40% of your time has gone out the window, right? So when you go beyond the peak of this hill, right, beyond that sort of 80, 85% of your capacity, you're actually getting less value, not more. And if that arrow is at about 100% right now, of course, this is where we still have this problem, right? We still have to do everything. And so most of the people I've spoken to in the NHS are not at 80%. They're not at 100%. They're at 120, 140% at capacity. And as a result, we're delivering far fewer projects than we should be. And remember, we only get points when we finish a project and deliver the value. We don't get points for doing it. So because there's so much of this sort of task switching and everything going on and so much overload, we're breaking eggs all over the place. Projects are not completing, or they're going over time or over budget, or they're fundamentally not delivering the value that was intended. So here's my big idea, right? I think if we can fix these things, we can double the impact, double the capacity for change, if you like, without spending any more money. We don't need any more resources. We can double it simply by changing the way that we work and the way that we manage decision-making across our portfolio. And just to give you an idea that might possibly work, I want to share with you, I'm not going to put a name on this. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but these are actual numbers from a call I had about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, with the PMO lead in England, within the NHS England. So that particular group had about 80 mandatory targets that they were tracking. And so they started 120 projects. The leadership team basically said, you've just got to do everything. By the way, if this sounds familiar, jump into the chat and just say, yay, or woe is me, or something, right? But if this is painful for you, jump in the chat and let other people know, because often people are sitting there thinking they're on their own. They're the only ones with this problem, and you are not, right? So about 80 mandatory targets. The leadership team said, just do everything, 120 projects, off you go, start now. And because they didn't have enough capacity, they actually completed only about 20 projects. Think about that for a second. And so what that actually means is all the work they put into the other 100 projects was wasted because they never delivered the value. They never got to the end. They never got the points at the end of the game. So if we could focus our resources on, say, just 40 of those projects, instead of trying to deliver 120, we could actually deliver 40 instead of delivering 20. Right? We just doubled the throughput simply by turning away a bunch of those projects. Sounds easy, right? It sounds obvious. It's kind of difficult to do. So we're going to talk now about how to fix some plumbing. Right? We're going to get in there. We're going to get into the detail, and we're going to go through this reasonably quickly to see how we're doing. So what we want to do is put ourselves on top of the hill. Okay, and there are 2 components to that. The first is project prioritization. So by that, I want to be really clear. The prioritization piece is figuring out which projects are most valuable and most attractive. Right? So think of it as scoring projects, if you like. And then there's also portfolio selection. I very deliberately split these apart because they're slightly different processes. And if you try and do them both together as the same thing, you're going to get awfully confused, right? So the first step is let's prioritize. Let's figure out which projects are most valuable. Then let's figure out how we put those projects together. Now, prioritization is hard. I hear this again and again. So why is it hard? Why is it difficult? Well, the reason is that your leadership team don't agree on what the goals are that they're trying to achieve. They don't agree on what the priorities of the organization are. So as a fun example, right, this guy, he's been stuck on the island for 3 years. He sees a boat and the only thing he can think is, get off the island. Of course, this guy, he's been in the boat for 2 weeks. The only thing he's had to drink is recycled bodily fluids, if you know what I mean. And he can't wait to get out of the boat. He sees the land. He's like, land, I can get out of the boat. Yay. And so these guys, they're looking at the same situation, they're looking at the same data, but they have very different goals. One wants to get off the island, one wants to get out of the boat. And so they come to different conclusions. And this is what's happening in your leadership team, right? Some people think the machine that goes ping is most important. Other people think that wait times for ambulances is more important. And unless they agree on that, what they're trying to achieve, it's going to be impossible to select which projects to do, because the leadership team is going to keep pulling you in different directions. So they're not disagreeing about which project's more important. They're disagreeing about which goals are more important, right? So to fix prioritization, we have to get the leadership team aligned on what value means. What is the value that we want to achieve? So how do we do prioritization? So you could go and hit Google and type in project prioritization. You'll get roughly 46 million results. But a lot of those results are just people writing stuff, right? They're telling you what their grandparents used to do prioritization, or this worked for me over there. And there's a lot of kind of myths and legends about how to do prioritization well. And what the research tells us, and yes, there is research into how to do project prioritization, good, rigorous academic research. So what the research tells us is that a lot of those traditional ways of doing prioritization are not terribly good, right? You might as well use the magic 8 ball half the time. So everything that I'm going to tell you now is based on the rigorous research. And here's just an example of some of the papers that went into this. I'm going to focus on this one in particular. This was some research by the University of New South Wales. They looked at over 100 different methods for prioritizing projects. And so this is the magic spreadsheet. This is the beauty parade. This is give everyone $100 to put on the favorite projects. This is all those methodologies that you may have tried in the past. And what they discovered is that in a complex organization, and the NHS is about as complex as it gets, in a complex organization, there were only 2 methodologies that really worked. One is called DEA, Data Envelopment Analysis. And the other is something called AHP. Now, at this point, your head's probably going, bing, 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 AHP. We're going to talk about that in a second. Okay, AHP is the winner. And the reason it's the winner is because, yes, it works, but it's also relatively easy and straightforward to implement. DEA is really difficult. So AHP, for the purposes of this webinar, does not mean allied health professionals. Please cleanse that from your brain. It's nothing to do with allied health professionals. AHP stands for Analytic Hierarchy Process. And it's a decision science technique that's been around for many, many years. And it's absolutely worth using the right tool. First of all, because it's all about building buy-in so you can put yourself on top of the hill, which is really, really important. But if you think about this data, so there's research from the Project Management Institute. They looked at portfolios around the world, public sector, private sector. And what they found was that in a typical portfolio, 20% of the projects in the portfolio are so badly aligned with the goals of the organization, they should be stopped. That's a really good working definition of waste. So if you're investing on behalf of the NHS, £10 million a year in projects, chances are at least 2 million of that is waste, right? But worse than that, because you're overloading your people, right? Doing that £2 million worth of projects that you shouldn't be doing is actually slowing down the delivery of the projects you should be doing. So it's worse than just wasting resources. It's actually taking the food off the table from the projects that you should be doing. So what is this AHP voodoo? In concept, it's really, really simple, right? You start off by having a discussion about what are the business goals? What are the goals that we're trying to achieve? Whether it's about diagnosis, treatment, freeing up beds, whatever it is, whatever the goals are in your organization, you take those, you turn them into a set of criteria and weight the criteria. You do that with the leadership team. Then you score projects. You get subject matter experts to score projects against those criteria. It's pretty obvious, right? And then you bring that together, see some pretty pictures and make some decisions. Now, of course, this does seem super simple. It is super simple. This is why we like AHP. In concept, it's simple. How you do it is what matters. So if you imagine because this thing here looks a little bit like what you would build in a magic spreadsheet, right? You get some criteria, you weight them, you score some projects. So let's pretend you're doing it in that magic spreadsheet, right? The problem is you're going to end up not with no buy-in to your prioritization process. And let me give you one reason why. So if you imagine you're going to weight the criteria, so you bring everyone into a room and you say, hey, criteria 1, what weight should we put on this? And so the head honcho leans back and she says, I think that one has 23.7% of the weight. Okay. Now, there are two problems with that number. First, she just made it up, right? There's no real logic behind that number. Second is that now everyone else around the table is sitting there going, do you know, I don't think it's 23.7%, but I've only had one coffee this morning. I don't feel like having a fight with the CEO or the CFO or whoever it is that put that 23.7 number out there. So they stay quiet, and you move on to the next criteria. The same thing happens, and the next criteria, same thing happens. So by the end of the meeting, the only thing that everyone's agreed on, but people usually don't say out loud, is that the model you've just built to score projects and to prioritize is wrong. I know it's wrong because I disagreed with all the numbers that went into it. So AHP fixes that using this principle we're going to go through. So asking what weight should I put on a criteria, that's like me asking you, does anybody want to have a guess actually? How tall is that tree? Quickly, into the chat. Have a guess. How tall do you think that tree is? Joe, give me some of the guesses.
People are still debating the idea, I think, at the moment.
All right, have a guess.
Oh, 12 meters. So Chris is in there first with 12 meters.
Okay. Let's get a few. Keep going, guys. Keep
9,
putting your best.
10,
keep putting your best guesses in.
We're switching between metric and imperial. How tall would you like it to be? Very philosophical from Kay there.
I like that one. Yes,
bonsai
I like that one.
tree, 20 centimeters.
Right. So now
bigger than the one next to it.
Thank you, Emma. Stay with that, Emma. That is genius, because we're not going to ask how tall that tree is. We're going to ask which one's taller. So now put into the chat which one's taller. Which of those two trees? It's not a trick question.
So it's a matter of perspective. Lola's come back. Is it tall or really close? Well, Father Ted reference there.
Yes, quite. They're both, in fact, the same distance away for the purpose of this exercise.
There's a good comment from Matt that says there's 3 trees.
There are, actually. That's a good point, Matt. I'd never noticed that before. Thank you. Gosh, what a group of pedants. I had no idea.
Detailed. Very good at detail.
Details. Excellent. So the point is, right, you're going to get that right every time. You don't need to know how tall the tree is. We just need to know, is it taller or shorter than the other tree? And that's sort of the organizing principle behind the AHP process for weighting criteria, is we say, okay, here are 2 criteria, which is more important and by how much more? Is it a little bit more important or a lot? Now, when you do this, all kinds of things are happening, right? This is eliminating all kinds of different forms of bias. It's helping people, it's helping force people off the fence, right? So they can't just say everything's important. They've got to actually decide and think about it. Which of these is more important? And which of these is more important for the whole as an organization, not just as my department. So if I'm in cardiology, right, I'm going to say everything in cardiology, anything cardiology-like is important if we're voting on projects. But we're not talking about projects here. We're talking about the goals for the hospital or the trust that you're working in. And And so when you do this as a team sport. And this is rather fun. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with Wisdom of the Crowd. There was a splendid book a couple of decades ago with that title. And it came from a guy who was at a state fair in the US. And there was a competition to guess the weight of an ox. And I know these aren't oxes. We'll come back to that. It was to guess the weight of an ox. And each individual guess was sort of random, right? But what they found was that the average of the weight guesses was really, really close. So where you guys were all estimating the height of the tree, I suspect if we took the average of what you guys put in the chat, you'd be reasonably close, right? So not only are we having good discussions, not only are we eliminating biases, but we're also leveraging wisdom of the crowd to get to something that feels like a better answer. And yes, I know it's not an ox, these are Highland cattle, but they're cuter than ox, so I put a picture in there. And I come from a Scottish family, so there's a bit of family pride here. Get over it. So you go through all that criteria pairwise weighting, and you do it as a team sport with the leadership team, all listening to each other, all contributing. It's all about discussion, and the discussion builds buy-in. And ultimately what you get is these criteria weights that we can use to score projects and drive ideation and so on. Okay. So now we can go and we can score our projects, and we end up with something that looks a bit like this. So the vertical axis here is the score, right? The value score. So this is what contribution does this project make overall to our goals as an organization. The horizontal axis is cost. This is super, super simple, right? This is super simple. This allows us now to start thinking about the zones where we want to invest. So these are the stars, right? High value, low cost. We want lots of those. Pet cemetery or the zombie zone. This is where, these are low value, high cost projects. We don't want to be doing these if we can avoid it. Sometimes you can't avoid it. This is often where the machine that goes, for any Monty Python fans out there, this is often where the machine that goes ping lives, right? It's that little pet project that somebody wants. So we want to kill those off. Now, when you do prioritization right, so very often what you find normally is that leaders in the organization will champion their project, even if it's down in this zone, because it's my pet project. When you do prioritization right, the leadership team as a group owns the definition of value and buy into that definition. And what happens then is that when somebody has a project in this zone, they actually tend to kill their own project, which is wonderful, right? Because I'm sure everybody's had that experience where there's a project that everybody knows is a zombie or a pet, and you're trying to kill it, and the person who's sponsoring it just defends it to death, right? Well, that tends to go away when you do prioritization right. Rolls Royces. Now, these can be very important, valuable projects, but they're also really, really expensive. So would it be better to actually not do a Rolls Royce and to do 2 or 3 smaller, equally valuable projects over on the left-hand side, right? So everything in this Rolls Royce zone, you should challenge and just make sure that that's the right use of resources. It may be, but we've got data now to challenge. And then these backpack fillers, these are not terribly important projects, but they're also very small. So if you happen to have little bits of resource left over, these are a great way to use those resources just to squeeze a bit more value out of the system. But of course, resources, yes, we have to overlay those on top of everything, right? So it's not just which projects we want to do, it's which ones do we have the capacity and the space to do. And in this chart, it sort of looked like we had one resource utilization rate, but of course we don't. We typically have multiple resource types that we're trying to use and a different capacity for each one. And all your projects are using different amounts of those different types of resources. And it's really horribly complicated. How do we find the group of projects that's going to maximize the value? And this is where AI comes in. So we've developed some AI that will put you there. It'll simulate thousands of portfolios, the AI guiding the simulation, looking for ones that are going to add the most value and put you right on top of that hill. That's something that would be really difficult to do without AI technology. And just look at the difference between those two. Right, that's huge, and it hasn't required us to spend any more money or hire any more people or anything. We can massively increase the value simply by re-engineering the prioritization and selection process. Now, my next duck, this is just for fun, right? This little bit. So these ducks are all AI generated. When this one came out, it just made me giggle because it reminded me, I don't know if anybody on here is old enough to remember ER. Does anybody remember ER? Just quick yay in the, yeah. So this reminded me of the scene where Doug, he's been off and he's collected a heart from somewhere to do a heart transplant. He comes back on the helicopter and he's got his little cool box thing with a heart in it. And this made me think of, hey, I wonder if that's what Doug looks like 25 years later, right? He's put on a bit of weight. He's, no, he still looks gorgeous, doesn't he? It's just so annoying and unfair. Never mind. Right, let's get back to it. All right, so what else can we do to accelerate change? So this bit's kind of fun. So one of the things I've heard again and again talking to people across the NHS is that, the financial year starts and we start all our projects all at once because everybody's shouting at us, we've got to do it, and we've got 12 months to do it, we've got to fit it all in this little 12-month window, go. So what do? Well, you start project one, right? You do a bit of work on project one, then you hop onto project two, hop onto project three, back to project one, right? And so on. And eventually, we get to the point where we have some value. There it is. That's the first value that we deliver, all the way out there on the right-hand side. There's an alternative. Instead of starting everything at once, stagger the projects, right? Create a roadmap where you're balancing your resources, the load on the resources with the resources you have available to deliver. So you're only starting projects when you expect the resources to come free to actually do them. Now, so quick question, does anybody remember how much of your resource gets wasted because we're overloading people? Anybody remember what task switching is costing you?
Jump quick into the chat.
Anybody remember the number?
I remember. 60% from Sarah, but Chad's coming with 40.
40, there we go. There it is, 40%, up to 40%. And so guess what? Because we're no longer overloading people and they're no longer task switching, you get that 40% back. So we can fit in one or two more projects for free. And we're delivering all of those projects earlier. Every one of those projects is finishing earlier than it would have done if we were task switching. So it sounds a little counterintuitive, but actually delaying the start of some of your projects accelerates the delivery of those projects. This is a really, really powerful technique, guys. Quite hard to do without the aid of technology. And again, we've built some AI, Transparent Choice has built some AI that'll do this for you and figure all of that out, and it'll do it in a few seconds. But it's a really, really powerful technique. So we've got three techniques there that we've talked about today to help us double the amount of value, all without having to change the way that we actually run projects. This is all about that portfolio management and the governance, the portfolio governance and decision making about which projects do we do, which ones do we not do, how do we allocate resources and all that kind of good stuff. All right, so this QR code, if you scan this, and I'll show this again at the end. If you scan the QR code, there's a whole bunch of resources. We've put together a little page of resources for you that'll help you get started with some of these and learn more about these techniques and how to use them. There's some videos, there are a couple of ebooks, things like that. All right, so scan that. I'll show this again at the end. So right about now, right, and this is a little creation, Laura Barnard. Anybody who's in PMO, if you don't follow Laura Barnard, you are not doing your job. Go write down her name and follow Laura Barnard. She's a phenomenon in this space. And Laura talks about the yeah, but monster. Right? This is the monster that crawls up on your shoulder and sits there whispering in your ear when you think, oh, I know I should do this. This is a good idea, right? And the yeah, but monster whispers in your ear and says, yeah, but that wouldn't work here. Yeah, but the clinicians, they don't listen to us. Yeah, but I don't have access to the CFO, right? And this is where we've got you, right? So we're teaming up. We've teamed up with the HPCA to help kill the yeah but monster. Okay, this is going to be fun. We're going to help you get your ducks in a row to get the buy-in that you need to make the change happen. So it's going to start off with a Case for Change workshop, and you're going to get an email after this webinar looking for feedback on the webinar. So whatever you do, give it 5 stars, like, subscribe, all that kind of usual stuff. You know, so on that form, you will be able to sign up or express interest in joining the Case for Change workshop. This is the workshop where we will work with you as a group, and there are only, I think, 20 or 30 places, was it, Joe, that we've
30
got?
max.
30 max. Okay, so there are only 30 places, and we're going to co-create as a team Case for Change. So this is building the so what's in it for me, for your organization, for your leadership team, to engage and come and have the conversation with us. You know, if you want to come to that workshop, it's free. What we're going to, what you need to bring to that workshop is bring your experiences and anecdotes, many of which will be about disasters that have happened, and to share those anecdotes, because your anecdote may trigger something in somebody else's head, right, that they can use to get people to buy in and to understand the cost of the way that things are done today. Right, the cost in terms of your ability to execute change, the cost in terms of the ability to deliver projects. And if you have data about the projects in your organization, bring that as well, because that can go into the Case for Change and make it more quantitative. But at the very least, bring those experiences, bring those stories, and be ready to engage in creating a document that's your document, your version. Everybody should walk away with their own version that you can use to start getting buy-in across the organization. And then if you like, we'll engage with you to go and sell that to your leadership team. And this isn't a case of you just give it to someone and magic happens. You actually got to go walk the halls, go talk to people, explain to them, ask for their perspective, ask what problems they're struggling with, ask why they're frustrated, right? And help them understand how this new way of working can help them achieve their goals. Okay, so when you do that, you start to get buy-in to you personally, to the PMO as an organization, to get stuff done. And then, assuming that you get that buy-in, we're developing a bunch of governance and control templates. So these are things that will help you put in place good governance, good decision making. That's all governance means, by the way. It's a scary word, but it just means good decision making across the portfolio. So we're going to create a bunch of templates that you can use, because it's not just criteria and technology and that kind of stuff. There's sort of the process, the workflow that things need to go through. And finally, what we've done, we're committed to supporting and helping the NHS. So we've donated, I forget whether it's 4 or 5 months worth of free software that anybody who goes through this program can get access to actually underpin and do the prioritization, put yourself on top of the hill, get your staggering in place, and provide visibility and control to the leadership team so they know where the money's going, they have control over the money's going, and they have some visibility into what they're getting back for that investment. So as I say, that will be coming, the form will be coming via email tomorrow, I think it is, Joe, that Helen's planning to send it out.
That's right, yes, tomorrow at the latest, so that everybody can access that. But they can access the link to register for the workshop now, because that link's in the chat. So we've already got 3 people registered. So if you're interested,
Awesome.
do get in there quickly. It's going to be on a first come, first served basis. So please do fill that in now. But it's also important that we get your feedback about the session, and also any thoughts and ideas around what else we can do to support you with this, even if you can't make that workshop. So what can we do to help?
Excellent. And one final thought before they drag me off, which they always do, by the way. So one final thought, right? So Laura Barnard, who I mentioned a few minutes ago, lives in Florida, and as you may recall, a huge hurricane hit there a couple of weeks ago. And I was due to speak to another guy who lives just outside Tampa the day before the hurricane, and he didn't turn up to the conference call. And I'm like, why didn't he turn up? I sent him a message, and he basically said, because I'm fleeing for my life, right? And so the point is that they knew the storm was coming, right? So the tsunami of change is coming, right? None of us can be under any illusion. So change is coming, and it's coming at an order of magnitude bigger than anything we've probably seen before. So we can wait till the storm arrives and then prepare to deal with it. If you do that, your boat's going to land on the dock, right? Because your boat needs to be locked down and ready for the storm long before the storm ever arrives. So please, please, please do engage. Even if you don't join this process, engage in this conversation about preparing to improve the ability to deliver change to the NHS. All the other money that goes into the NHS is not going to be effective if the NHS itself isn't able to deliver change. So you people, in many ways, are the most important individuals in the NHS for the next couple of years. The rest of the team doesn't know that yet, okay? But you really, really are. And as such, we have a little request at the end. Here's the QR code again, in case anybody wants to be going down there and picking that stuff up. But one of the things that we'll do in the next day or so is email out to you a template letter or template email that we'd like you to, and this is really coming from Transparent Choice. Which is to go to West Streeting, specifically to say, dear Wes, we love the fact change is coming, right? We need change, but we have no capacity to deliver it. So please, Wes, come and help us improve our capacity to deliver the change that you want. Because without your help, we're not going to be able to do it. And if enough of us send that message to Wes, your message won't get through to Wes Streeting personally, but it'll get through to his team. And if enough of those messages ask for that same support from Wes Streeting, then maybe, just maybe, we'll get some really senior level support to make some of this stuff happen, and we'll all be able to transform the NHS together. So with that, I think, Joe, I'm done.
Yes, that's it. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Stuart. That was fascinating and insightful, and I think some really important messages, and part of it is, how do we as a community embrace that and make use of that within our work, in our PMOs, in our transformation programs, all of that, but also how do we raise awareness with the senior leads within our organizations as well, because this stuff comes out of portfolio prioritization and benefits and value, but that's specific to project management. How do we make other professions aware of it? How do we raise it with finance, with the senior leadership team? How do we get that engagement from those that are doing the real decision making? So do let us know, fill in the form. We've got 13 people already registered interest in the workshop, which is fantastic. So please do get that in there. Some really good comments from people. Sorry,
and Joe, sorry, just to jump in for a second. So I just spotted Tony Prenser is on here. So Tony, why don't you just jump in and give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, right? Is this stuff real, is my question. So if you don't know Tony, he's Dr. Tony Prenser, super expert on PMOs, writes a lot, talks a lot, really, really, really smart guy, way smarter than I am, actually. But he doesn't understand any more about baseball than I do, as we discovered in LA together.
Tony, are you there?
Yeah, that's a great stuff, and thank you for bringing all the great information about project prioritizations. There's a lot of people that they don't know what it is, and you well explain it. And this is the go-to ways. I just posted something about it. So transparent choice is the choice.
Good man, I like that. Well said, Tony. I'm going to steal that, Tony.
Thank you for contributing, Tony. Thank you, Stuart. And again, you know, with the financial constraints and the challenges and the 10-year plan ahead, prioritisation is going to be absolutely critical. So thank you all for contributing and your comments in the chat. And we hope to see you at the workshop on the 19th, and look forward to that then. But please do share with colleagues as well. We'll be posting the recording and the link so people can access the resources that Stuart and team have very kindly offered to share with us. Thank you again, Stuart. It's fantastic to have that great session.
Awesome.
Thank you for everybody contributing.
My thanks go to all of you guys, because you're the ones who are out there doing the job, and this stuff matters. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you. See you all again next time, and thanks for contributing, everybody. Take care. Thanks all. Bye-bye.